Oh, hold on. Okay. Hello? Oh. It's Basil. Basil Buddha Cat presents thing. Exactly.
Say hi.
Basil's calling to wish all of us, all three of us, the three magi, as he likes to call us. He's calling to wish up. Well, I got to quote him first, and then I'll translate. He said, "Meow." Okay, now I'll translate. He says, "I'm wishing all three of you guys a wonderful Christmas, a happy New Year, and great expectations for 2017, and a lot of luck dealing with Donald Trump." Hey, thanks, Basil. Okay.
Meow,
Okay. Now he's got something else to say. Okay, I'll quote him first. Meow. 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 Okay, said thanks. Okay.
Meow back.
Okay, well I'm gonna bring the volume down on this phone because we can't get any more calls because we're too busy.
Getting ready.
So welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson, and we got three hosts today. We got as Basil said, we've got the three magi here, and we're going to talk about not about the magi, but we're going to talk about issues, things that are out there. And I think before we came on, somebody was talking about. I think it was Judy was mentioning about talking about fake news. So, but Mark, the hell is fake news? I know, but you know better than I do.
So when you fake the news, you're faking it so that your partner news channel doesn't know.
Take your time, get it right.
Fake news. I feel like I should have brought a stack of cards with news stories. Some are real, some are fake. We could have drawn cards to decide whether it is
or false. True or false.
Well, Sly Stone, the first one I saw that clearly rung very, very badly in my head was a story that said, "Sly Stallone is gone. We will miss him." And of course, I didn't click on it because later on we find out that when bad things happen when you click on it, but you can explain that. But it was just a story intent on instigating people saying, "Oh my God, Sly Stallone is gone," and they click on it. What happens when you click on it?
Well, I mean, this is the internet, that you can make more money with fake news than you can with real news, because every time someone clicks and lands on your website, it pulls up advertisements on the right, advertisements on the left. You get the first sentence of the story, you have to scroll down, other ads serve up, and people create fake news simply as a way to make money.
The hook.
It's
like,
So when you click on it, they're getting some cha-ching, as Basil would say. They're getting some cha-ching from an advertiser whose advertisements pop up mysteriously and suddenly.
And those folks aren't necessarily choosing to advertise on a fake news site. It's just they're getting ads through Google or other ad servers, and they just pop up and populate. Like, one of the things on the internet, not necessarily fake news, but there are things like the 20 greatest ways to
lose weight.
Yeah.
And you click on it, and you go there, and item number 1 comes up, and there's a bunch of ads on the right, and a bunch of ads on the top, and a bunch of below, and then you want to find out the second way, and you click, and it brings up an entirely new page, and it serves a whole new bunch of ads on the right, and by the time you click through 20 pages, they've served 100, 200 ads, and they're getting cents. It's not like you get $1 per ad, but it starts to add up.
And like a pyramid.
A million ads at a penny an ad.
It's a lot of money.
That's some serious amount of change.
You can do that weekly.
So now, it was also mentioned before the show by a good friend of the show, Kurt Ravis. Thank you, Kurt Ravis. He's going to do an ad, and I think it's timely. he's going to put something up there which says Donald Trump's is like a doorknob, or the other one was John Boehner loses election. Is that Boehner loses election for House Speaker, or was it John Boehner loses erection for Speaker?
Oh my.
And of course, people are going to click on that and say, "People, are you kidding? They want to see." I don't know if anybody wants to see John Boehner's election or erection, but they might click on it thinking, or they might just misread election as erection. And
So
jump
again,
on it.
it's entertainment. The bottom line is, you want to be entertained.
We're being catcalled.
Yeah.
So
I should never given Basil my phone number.
it's capitalism and marketing and entertainment all rolled into
Yeah.
one with the internet.
But it works, and the folks make no bones about it. They're not worried about the fact that they're spreading
Yeah.
half-truth, little truth, no truth whatsoever around. It's just to get you there. And I mean, it's an amazing thing. You can actually sit at home and make a ton of money. This sounds great. Wait a minute. Why am I not doing? No. It's interesting though.
And the downside is?
The downside is nothing. The downside is, do you care that you're what they call clickbait headlines? That
Can you be
really,
sued
No.
for falsely enticing someone to?
No.
No. Okay. Well,
What's wrong with purveying fake news? Thanks, Basil.
We're being catcalled again.
Yeah. What's wrong with purveying fake news? I mean, there's a news station out there, Fox, which does it all the time, and CNN probably does a lot of it. I think it's safe to say CNN does a lot of fake news too.
absolutely.
Whatever stirs the pot a little bit, whatever gets a little bit of, whatever amps up the advertising dollars. Again, back to advertising. Les Moonves from CBS said Donald Trump was the best thing that ever happened to CBS, and they had him on all the time. Every day, Donald Trump would oblige them with some witty, charming, or completely asinine remark, generally more on the asinine than witty and charming. Mm-hmm. But people would see the beginning of any news show, and the beginning of the news show would be, today, Donald Trump said, bang, people are tuned right in.
Here's my take on the fake news. Like everyone's focusing on, these bad people who make fake news sites and they make money, and that's one side of it. But I think given this election cycle and how we know through either WikiLeaks emails or through just things coming out later on, we know that the big mainstream media sites are not telling the truth. And this fake news in the news came from a list that the Washington Post put together claiming that these sites are all purveyors of fake news. And while some of them are sites that are dubious with what they post, there are other sites that are actually fairly newsworthy that just happen to be on the, let's say, the more radical end of things.
The underbelly.
And they're kind of calling out mainstream media for not telling us. They're not lying. They're just omitting things, and so they're lying by omission, which is that's the main tool in the toolbox of politicians. And so I think this whole fake news thing is a way of mainstream media trying to regain their credibility after, essentially, let's say, ignoring Bernie Sanders for the duration of the campaign, given that even the Washington Post has come out and said, I think we picked the wrong candidate. Yeah, really?
You think?
Yeah, we were at the same.
They picked the only candidate, apparently, that could possibly lose to Donald Trump, as Basil loves to call him, and I'll go along with that. He's the only candidate on the Democratic side, the only person in the Democratic Party, probably the only person in America that could have run as a major party candidate and lost to Donald Trump. And the other side of that is that Donald Trump is probably the only Republican candidate of the 2,000 or 3,000 that started out this election cycle, probably the only one that could have lost to Clinton. He didn't. Well, he did it was a split. She won the popular vote, and he won the electoral vote. So we'll call that.
But
we'll call that a Mexican standoff if you
He's
don't
making
mind.
it perfectly clear that in his opinion,
Yeah.
the ballots were tainted.
Yeah.
And every one of his surrogates is pretty much, that's what he said, and he's the president-elect. So, but where's the proof that the votes were tainted? And
Well, if you want something that's been proven about tainted ballots, there is something. In Wisconsin,
Tainted ballot.
Trump won by 27,000 votes. A few precincts have gone back and just gone through their tabulator tape, and in a few, not a lot of precincts have gone back through their tabulator tape, and all of a sudden Donald Trump's votes went down $5,000. 5,000 votes went down by 5,000. Clinton's votes went down 0. So Trump's 27,000 votes so far margin is down to 22,000. So there's.
But no one's mentioning
there's,
that, or
so there's
is
5,000
that under the rug?
So there's 5,000 fake votes that Trump got so far that we know of. That's factual. That's not suppository, or that's not supposition, or
So are we dealing?
suppository.
Are we dealing with
No shoot.
a tainted system, a system that is partially broken? There's a wheel missing. How do we ensure that none of what they're saying about tainted voting going on is accurate? How do we?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because because there is in Connecticut, and I want folks to look up a name, Luther Weeks, Luther Weks, like how many weeks in a year, and also Connecticut Election Protection, because Luther Weeks has been running an organization under the Secretary of State's office in Connecticut since, he was on Progressive Soup in 2009. So I think they had begun they had begun as early as 2008, because I sat in on an election audit in Fairfield, Connecticut, and the election that they audited there was the primary between candidate Senator Barack Obama and candidate Senator Hillary Clinton. And that's the first one I believe that I sat in. And we've been doing it every year since, every election since. So every time there's an election, election protection has the duty of sending volunteers, and this is where I'm going to ask you for something, volunteers in to observe as they take these paper ballots out. And Connecticut has paper ballots, real paper ballots, not just dits and dots on an electronic voting machine. But in Connecticut, we have paper ballots that are physical, that you can go back afterwards. They store them away under lock and key in each precinct after the election. As soon as the election's over, they lock them up, they store them in a container that's locked, in a closet that's locked, so they are under careful guard. When they do an audit, and they audit 5% of the towns, 5% of the towns do an audit each election, and it's random. It changes from election to election. They do the machine where I think it's Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts reach in, and they'll have somebody reach in and pick out a random town to do a random recount, a random audit. So you go in, and it's going to cost you a couple, 3 hours of your time, but it's money and time well spent, and it doesn't cost very much because it's paid for by the fund of lost articles. If somebody has a bank account and they don't claim it for 10
Lost and found
10
ballots?
then that money goes into a fund.
Okay.
That fund is what pays for the auditing of Connecticut elections every election. So you give a couple, 3 hours of your time, you go and you sit down, both registrars in the town, the Democratic registrar, the Republican registrar, go into the closet, unlock the closet together, so it's clear that there are no...
Countersigned by more than one.
Absolutely.
people.
They go in, they unlock the locked closet under the observance of whoever happens to be there observing. They bring the container out, the container is locked. In the case of Connecticut, it's a black Diebold bag because they make our voting machines. But Diebold can make good voting machines, it's been proven, because they made ours. They just make a lot of lousy ones for other states. But so they open up the closet, under lock and key, they open up the bag under lock and key. They have the tags on them, so they know that they haven't been tampered with since the election. They unsnip the thing. They open up the bag. They bring out the physical ballots that you make the little dots on and put into the machine. And as you look, let's say you're that 850th voter that put your ballot into that machine to be calculated. 851. You know your ballot was scanned. You know it's been counted. You know that somebody's got it afterwards under lock and key. And in the cases of the audits, they bring it back out. They open up the cabinet. They open up the bag. They bring it out, and they have people that the Democratic and the Republican registrars have brought in to actually physically recount the ballots for that election. And on top of that, they have people like myself and other people that have gone in and sit and watch.
Witnesses
to democracy in action.
So there are no hanging chads.
No hanging chads. There are ballots. Now you can't, in Connecticut, you can't write in a vote because the machine can't.
It's invalid.
The machine can't scan it. The machine can only scan that you put a little bit of a dot at least in that little oval next to the candidate you want. If you vote for, let's say in this case, this year, there were some folks I noticed that did what's called overvotes. They voted for Richard Blumenthal for senator, but they voted on the Democratic line, and Blumenthal was also on the Working Families Party line. So somebody got a little overzealous and did the dot under Democratic Party and did the dot under Working Families Party for Senator Blumenthal's reelection. That's an overvote. Didn't count. The machine kicks it out. It doesn't.
So that vote
it doesn't
was
get counted.
null and void.
Null and void because you're not allowed to vote for more than one dot.
So that person who mistakenly or purposely did that lost their vote.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Because when they
the
go
old
back.
yes and no answer.
Yes and no, because when they go back and they recount it and they do the audit of that election, if it were a close election and Senator Blumenthal, say, lost by 20 votes, and let's say there were 30 people that went in and did the overvote, they are allowed to go back and they can judge that as being, well, that person voted for him twice, but their intent was definitely to vote for Senator Blumenthal.
So that,
likewise,
but only in those instances where it's needed in a
correct.
closer race.
Correct. Likewise, if somebody, Dan Carter was on the Republican Party line for Senate, Dan Carter was on the Independent Party line for Senate. If somebody got overzealous and said, well, I like that guy, and Dan's been on the show talking about his vote on the gun bill, and I like him. I like Dick Blumenthal. I voted for Blumenthal, but I like Dan Carter also. I think he's a pretty decent and honest guy. So if somebody goes in and votes, fills in the dot for Dan Carter Republican and Dan Carter Independent Party, likewise, overvote doesn't count. And there were a few of those too that we found. I went to Shelton, by the way, which is about 30 minutes away, to sit for 3 hours and observe democracy in action. So again, Luther Weeks, Connecticut Election Protection, would like to have you contact him. You do an hour phone call, a conference call, so you know what you're doing, you know what to look for, you know what to expect, and then you've agreed to go. You just do one. And you can go within 20 miles, 50 miles, as far as you're willing to travel or as close as you need to be to home. You go in and you sit and you watch for a few hours and watch real human beings counting real paper ballots and proving that democracy actually works in the state of Connecticut. None of which happened in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and many other states where it's almost impossible to determine who actually won.
But in Connecticut, it's only 5% of the towns.
Yep.
And it's only 3 races.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough.
Well, it's if you're a statistician, if you understand statistics, and I know you do, and I know you understand statistics pretty well too, Roberto, a 5% random sample is a pretty good sampling to advertise and to prove that the 100% was accurate.
But the bigger number that we haven't touched on yet is what percentage of eligible voters, let's say Connecticut,
Yeah.
voted. What's the number on that?
In the presidential race, I believe it was about 60% nationwide.
Okay,
I
so-
don't know about Connecticut.
Okay.
Like we could find out the people watching, go look it up, see what percentage of people voted in each race for Connecticut, and then report back and let us know.
Well,
'Cause
you're
I
saying
don't
that the
know.
national average was 60%?
For presidential.
Okay. So how do you figure, is it 5% of the 60?
Yeah.
So 3%
Yeah.
would be audited of the
3% of citizens in America in Connecticut were audited, because 60% of us represented 100%.
Now, is that
of the-
enough? Is that enough to show a taint if there was one, or how would you?
Well, here you go. In the first county, I think it was county, not city, that came back in Wisconsin, they found that the Democratic candidate lost 1 vote in the recount.
Yeah.
The Republican candidate lost 2 votes in the recount.
Yeah.
The Libertarian candidate had gained 11 votes.
I was waiting for the big
Okay.
number.
And the Green
How did that happen?
candidate
Yeah.
gained 17 votes.
The math. There's
So
something about that math. there. It's like a Rubik's Cube. You're trying to line it up so it.
So how did those votes not get
Yeah.
that many? Now it'd be one thing if, and the illogic that's going around that the Green candidate cost the Democrat candidate the election by saying that if every Green candidate had voted for the Democrat would have won, ignoring the fact that there's still a Libertarian candidate out there. So if you want to get rid of the Green candidate and add all of those votes to the Democrat, then you got to get rid of the Libertarian and add all of his votes
That's right.
to the Republican. And so he would have actually won more states if you do that. But no, people like to use the logic of just get rid of the Green. But regardless of that, what's going on that many of the Libertarian and Green votes weren't counted in the first place? Because if the Green Party gained 17 and the Democrat, for example, lost 17, then it would tell us something else.
There's a balance of something going
But
on,
17
but it's not
and
balanced.
1.
Yes.
17 Green votes were lost, and 1 Democratic Party vote was lost.
So-
1 Republican Party vote was lost. And how many Libertarian? How many?
11 and 17. So overall, 28 gained and 3 lost.
Yeah.
Now, what that doesn't really tell us is in the 17 gained, were there other Green votes that got tossed?
And that's 1 precinct in Wisconsin out of maybe probably thousands of
out of many, many, many.
many, many thousands of precincts in Wisconsin.
And I noticed that after that news came out, there really hasn't
Been much news.
been much.
Now, is that fake news or is that real news? Are we?
all the fake news that's fit to fake? I believe it was real, but was I punked?
Pumped. That's a. Yeah,
Was it fake?
Could be. You don't know. For
No, I think it's
The
safe to
whole
say-
Unless you
election
were
was fake,
So if we
frankly.
take so here we go. If we expand that 1 precinct over the entire state of Wisconsin, and I'm going to guess 5,000 precincts. That's my guess. I don't know, but I'm going to throw a number out there that I think is probably more than 2,000, probably less than 8,000. So I'm going to say 5,000. So if that's representative of all of Wisconsin, then you're going to see, say, 5,000 votes times 17, 5,000 precincts times 17 added on to the Green Party, and 5,000 times 11 added on to the Libertarian Party candidate.
That's 55,000 votes.
It's a lot of votes. Now, where do those votes go to?
They went to.
See, now, there you go. There's evidence. There's evidence that if Wisconsin...
What's that called?
They're in my soup.
Space and time.
So that's 55.
Oh.
So we're talking maybe
A
55,000
wormhole.
votes that
wormhole.
disappeared.
They went through the wormhole.
Disappeared.
So that's pretty solid reason for people in Wisconsin to be a little bit suspicious about what the hell happened to my vote. Now, if Wisconsin did like Connecticut, you wouldn't have that problem. Because in Connecticut, again, when I've been to recounts, and I'll go back to.
But wait though.
Yeah.
A moment of silence for all of the trees who are dying to give Connecticut a traceable voting system.
Oh my God.
Can I vote from home?
Seriously, right?
You can do a mail-in ballot in Connecticut, but you have to have good, honest reason that you're out of town on business or whatever. But if you go back, and I'll lost my train of thought for a moment. If you go
Wisconsin.
back, okay, Wisconsin. If you go back, and we're gonna have to come back to that later in the show. Continue. It'll come to me.
We were talking
Have
about
some more soup.
Wisconsin and lots of vote, and if you were in Connecticut and you had paper ballots, and then I interrupted with a moment of silence for the trees. I must be the Lorax or something.
Yeah.
But when it all comes down to it, and I mean, I've said this on the show before, I have zero faith whatsoever in the count and in the recount. Because if you can't get it right the first time, I really don't know what's supposed to make me believe in it the second time.
Okay, we're going to close on this thought, and then we're going to come back tomorrow at noon 30. Tomorrow, Thursday, noon 30. We're going to talk about.
I got one more,
in Connecticut. In
one
Connecticut.
more question.
We'll come back. We'll do that in the second show. But in that recount in Fairfield, Connecticut, in Fairfield, Connecticut, in 2008 presidential primary, Clinton v. Obama. There was off by one. There was a mistake. The count did not match up. What did they do? They physically brought the voting machines that had been used back out, opened them up, and the last vote apparently that went into one of the voting machines had gotten stuck and crumpled up. They found it. There's your vote. Everything was perfect. The count was perfect. We'll come back tomorrow. Roberto Perez, Mark Morash, and I. 9:30 tomorrow and 12:30 tomorrow. It's 9:30 now.
Wait, tease them though. What's your question? Tease them with the question.
Why are voters in this country not under one system of voting?
Progressive Soup, thank you very much for joining us, and we're going to address that right on noon 30 tomorrow, Thursday. Thanks for joining us.
Merry Christmas.